Hello everyone, peace be upon you. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and stay with me until the end of the story. Also, leave a comment telling me which city and country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has reached. For those of you who have already subscribed, I sincerely wish you good health, ease in all your affairs, abundant blessings, and may all your hopes and dreams come true. Amen. Now, let's begin the story. Morning heat sat low over Fort Bragg as the platoon formed on the gravel. Boots lined up, rifles slung, eyes front. Mike Donovan walked the row, sleeves tight, clipboard under his arm, jaw locked. He liked clean drills, clear calls, fast compliance. No guessing. He checked his watch and barked, double time. Urban Combat Field Alpha 9. Move. They ran to the mock city of stacked containers and steel stairs. Mike set the scenario fast: breach, clear, hostage out in 6. He marked angles on the board, assigned sectors, order of entry, pace. While he spoke, a voice from the second line cut in, calm, even. Lieutenant, your east door exposes the rear team if the north platform is active. It came from a woman in standard fatigues. No visible rank. Dark hair in a tight bun. Focused eyes. She didn't smile or fidget. She stood like she had done this a dozen times. Mike held her stare a second. Name. She tapped the corner of the map once. North platform. He disliked public corrections. Adjustments in front of the platoon frayed control. Keep the frame, he told himself. Execute first. Fix later. Run it, he said. First stack on me. Price takes 2. Briggs watches the rear. Go. They moved. The lane narrowed. Sim rounds cracked. Smoke hissed from a canister by the stairwell. Mike drove the first door, cleared his corner, called the next move. Above, 2 pop-up targets spit paint. The angle was ugly, exactly as she warned. He signaled a shift, but the unknown woman was already there, 2 quiet steps pulling the rear pair out of the kill box without breaking the line. No shouting. Just a precise hand signal. They finished 30 seconds under time. Hostage out. Perimeter set. Mike called reset and logged notes. Then the same voice again, you're fast, but the first door burns a man. Use the west hinge and keep pace without feeding that angle. Not loud, but the platoon heard it. Mike kept his face still, redrew the arrow, and set a second scenario without asking for more input. Gaines watched from the tower, arms folded. Evaluation day or not, Gaines smelled shaky control. Mike split teams, cycled radios. Price gave a small nod. Briggs kept his eyes down. The woman fell in on the left edge and said nothing. The second run was cleaner. Tighter corners. Fewer wasted steps. Halfway through, her voice cut once, window 2 left. And there it was, the silhouette ready to sting the trailing man. Mike swallowed the irritation and marked it. The field did not care about pride. By midday the sun burned the haze away. Sweat salted collars. Mike released the platoon for water. He stayed by the board, replaying lines and time stamps. He believed in discipline, but he knew the field punished stubbornness. The trick was not letting the platoon see the math on his face. She stepped beside him without sound. West hinge entry. Keep your speed and you save your 2. He looked at her closely. Steady breathing. No tremor. No thrill in being right. Not grandstanding, just certain. Name? He asked. Sarah Whitmore, she said. Nothing else. He nodded and called the platoon back. Third run. West hinge. Same clock. Move. The buzzer ended a clean clear. No crossfire, no wasted man, 2 seconds faster than the first evolution. Gaines wrote something on a pad. Price hid a grin. Briggs finally met his eyes. Mike didn't thank Sarah. Not out loud. He just said, again. They ran until the light shifted and long shadows cut the lanes. After the last reset, Mike dismissed the unit to Barracks Echo Wing and stood alone in the dust. The steel stairs gave one hollow ring and went quiet. He knew a shift had started, and he hated that it began in public. But the map didn't lie. Angles never lied. He slid the marker back into the tray, watched the last pair clear the gate, and told himself one thing as he headed toward the command office: keep control, keep pace, and find out who, exactly, had just walked into his field and read it better than he did. Mike repeated it on the walk to the command office east wing, boots thudding down the hall. Gaines was inside, cool air humming, blinds half shut. The captain glanced up, pen still moving. "How's Alpha 9? Mike set the clipboard on the desk. "Clean runs. One correction." He kept his tone flat. Gaines nodded toward the window. "Word is you've got a sharp new face in the formation." Mike didn't blink. "She reads lanes well," he said. Gaines let the silence hang. "Then read her nameplate." Dismissed. Night sat heavy over Barracks Echo Wing. Mike lay awake, running times and angles again, the calm voice cutting through the smoke, the way the rear pair slid out of danger with one small signal. It wasn't normal. It wasn't luck. He told himself the morning would reset the balance. Dawn hit hot and fast. Alpha 9 was already wired for a complex urban sim, multi-entry, stacked platforms, moving hostiles, hostage on a timer. Mike breathed hard, pointed to the sketch, hammered the order of march, tempo, safeties. He saw Sarah at the edge of the formation, hands behind her back, eyes steady. She did not take notes. She did not need to. First evolution, loud, chaotic, smoke thick. Mike drove the team into the main corridor, felt the line compress. A ricochet of sim paint snapped past a visor. He barked, left pinch. Then saw it, the funnel. Sarah's voice cut clean, "You're feeding a crossfire. Shift now." The rear stack hesitated, and the hesitation burned time. Mike forced the line forward, muscling the angle. The hostage made time, but one man bled in the script. Mike called reset, jaw tight. Second evolution, he adjusted, pushed a diagonal approach. Sarah slid 2 bodies 2 steps without a word and killed a trap he hadn't seen. The run finished faster than the first. When the buzzer died, he heard a ripple of chatter across the formation, quiet, but there. He tasted iron and dust. Control was slipping where the platoon could see it. He pulled the team in close. "We go again. This time, west stair, split breach, Price anchors, Briggs mirrors the timing." He glanced at Sarah. She didn't move. He hated that he wanted her to move. Third evolution, the timing broke at the stair head. A pop-up target spit paint at point blank. Sarah stepped in, intercepted a bad angle, hand up, crisp. Mike's chest lit with heat. "Execute the order," he snapped. "Hold your sector." She turned her head just enough. "Your order exposes your 2. Fix it." The words were even. Not loud. Final. Mike's vision tunneled. He saw the line watching him, Briggs through the visor, Price frozen, 2 privates half crouched. The air felt too tight in his vest. He stepped in, close, and the world narrowed to a single decision he didn't think about. His fist moved before his brain did. The crack of knuckles on jaw cut through the field like a dry branch snapping. Everything stopped. Smoke drifted without a sound. Sarah rocked back half a step, planted, and stared at him. No shout. No flinch. Just a cold, steady look that made the ground feel uneven. A hush slid through the formation. Someone whispered, "Lieutenant." Mike's heart climbed into his throat. For a beat he saw his own reflection in her visor lens, small, angry, wrong. Gaines' voice came over the tower PA, "All units freeze. Safety on. Clear the field." Inside the command office, the air felt colder than before. Gaines stood behind the desk now, not sitting. Mike kept his hands at his sides, knuckles faintly red. He tried to speak, but the door opened and Sarah stepped in, not in fatigues anymore, but in crisp Navy service uniform. The gold trident caught the light. Her rank sat plain on her chest. Gaines' tone was level. "Lieutenant Donovan, meet Lieutenant Commander Sarah Whitmore, Naval Special Warfare. She's here on joint eval orders. She watched you yesterday. She watched you today." Mike felt his mouth go dry. He couldn't pull his eyes off the trident. Everything in him wanted to rewind 10 minutes and put his hand back at his side. Sarah's voice was calm, almost clinical. "You struck a subordinate in a training environment out of frustration. There is no tactical gain in that decision. Only risk." Mike's stomach turned. He stopped. There wasn't a sentence that didn't sound like an excuse. Gaines let the silence do the work. The captain finally said, "This will be documented. But per Commander Whitmore's request, we treat this as corrective, not punitive, if you learn and adapt, immediately." Mike looked at her, relief and shame colliding. "Why?" She answered without blinking. "Because leadership failures are often ignorance wearing pride. You can fix ignorance. Pride takes longer." They went back to the field. The platoon stood rigid, not sure which way to look. Sarah didn't address the punch. She faced the map, tapped the west hinge, and laid out the route Mike should have called, step by step, steady and fast. The team listened like the floor might open. Mike stood beside her and made himself absorb every correction without a flinch. They ran the lane again. Clean. No bleed. No wasted feet. When the buzzer sounded, nobody cheered. They just breathed. Sarah gave one small nod to Price. Briggs squared his shoulders and glanced at Mike, waiting to see who he would be now. That night in Echo Wing, the barracks felt like a courtroom. Mike sat on his bunk and stared at the wall. He had been the loudest voice on the field and the weakest leader in the room. He pictured the trident under the fluorescence, the way Sarah never raised her tone, the way the entire field froze when he lost it. He catalogued the day like evidence, the crossfire he fed, the hesitation he caused, the blow he threw. He closed his eyes and finally said the thing out loud that he had avoided all day. "You are not in control. Not of her. Not of this. Not of yourself, yet." He opened his notebook and wrote 3 lines, "Observe before you order. Explain the why. Correct without ego." He underlined the last one until the pen bit the paper. Outside, a hum of generators filled the gap where his certainty used to be. Tomorrow, he knew, would not forgive him for today. He would face the same platforms, the same angles, the same eyes. And he would have to prove, step by step, that the hand he kept down was stronger than the one he had thrown. He carried that sentence out of Echo Wing before dawn, coffee gone cold in his grip. The yard lights painted long bars across the gravel. Alpha 9 waited like a test that could read his pulse. He found Price and Briggs already there, checking radios. Nobody brought up yesterday. That made it heavier. Gaines gave the brief in 10 flat lines and handed control over. Mike didn't grab the moment. He let the platoon form, called safety, and laid out the first lane. His voice was steady, not loud. He explained the why behind the route, pointed to the hinge, the blind window, the fallback. No theater. He could feel eyes trying to decide if this was real or a trick. Sarah stood off to the side, hands behind her back, silent. First Evolution moved. Mike watched more than he drove. He caught 2 hesitations and killed them with short calls, not barks. At the stairhead he swallowed the old impulse to muscle through and shifted the angle 2 steps early. The buzzer cut a clean run. No bleed. Breathing steadied in the formation like a tide leveling out. Second evolution, he handed the initial call to Briggs. The kid's throat went tight on the first line, but he found the rhythm. Sarah's chin dipped once, almost a nod. Mike let Briggs own the timing and only clipped in to fix a pacing error. Price grinned at the end, quick and small, like a muscle learning a new move. He expected whispers at Chow. He got them. The story of the punch wasn't going away. It ran ahead of him, then circled back at his shoulders. He heard seal and trident more times than he wanted. He didn't defend himself. He ate, stood, and went back to the whiteboard. When Sarah came by, he spoke first. I missed the window trap on the second lane. She looked at the map. Your corrections landed because you didn't try to win the room, she said. Then she walked. Afternoon brought a multi-entry sim with a hostage timer and rolling targets. The kind of lane that exposes lazy thinking. Mike split the team and gave Price anchor and Briggs mirror timing again. He assigned himself a rear overwatch and forced his hands to stay off the front door. Halfway through, smoke pooled wrong and visibility died. The old itch to take over flared. He counted to 3 and let his plan work. Briggs adjusted a beat early. Price covered the gap. The hostage hit the line with 8 seconds left. Sarah's voice came on the radio only once, good pace. No drag. In the debrief tent, he didn't hide from the ugly clips. He rolled the bad angles first, then the fixes, and kept every sentence short. He asked for 2 notes from the floor and took them without argument. When the room emptied, Sarah stayed. She tapped the screen where his hand had tightened on the barrel during the smoke collapse. That's where you always lose it, she said. She wasn't guessing. He nodded. I know. She didn't praise him. She didn't need to. Days stacked. The platoon adjusted to the new math. Respect shifted from fear to function. The work felt heavier and clearer at the same time. Mike wrote the same 3 lines in his notebook every night and meant them. Observe before you order. Explain the why. Correct without ego. He still hated that he needed a reminder. He wrote it anyway. The base rumor mill kept grinding. Some wanted a spectacle, some wanted him gone, some wanted proof he could fix himself. Gaines never said which group he was in. He just kept showing up to the tower and writing on the pad. Mike decided to let the logs answer for him. Late in the week, comms pinged with a priority flag. Ops dropped a short bulletin on the command net, potential hostage incident on the Gulf Coast, details building, joint tasking likely. The words landed like a weight across the base. The training field turned quieter. You could feel people measuring themselves without talking. That night, Echo Wing didn't sleep much. Mike lay awake and listened to the hum and the air vents and his own breath. The field had taught him how fast pride could break a line. A live scene would not forgive that mistake. He pictured doors that weren't paint and smoke that wasn't staged and civilians who didn't get a reset. He knew what his old self would do, talk loud, move fast, force the plan. He let that version die in the dark. Dawn came hard. The briefing room smelled like coffee and dry erase. A map of the Gulf Coast sat pinned on the board with 3 red circles and not enough notes. Gaines spoke first, preliminary tasking, standby for air. He looked at Sarah. She took the front, crisp and calm, eyes scanning the room as if counting heartbeats. Alpha 9 is done, she said. We will fight the fight in front of us. Donovan, you have Bravo for support, perimeter, and evac routes. Keep your people alive. No drag. No ego. She didn't raise her tone. The room heard her anyway. Mike wrote it down, not because he would forget, but because writing it made it binding. He lifted his eyes and met hers for 1 second. No apology. No plea. Just the promise he should have made before he ever stepped on her field. He would keep control, keep pace, and this time, he would not have to prove that the hand he kept down was stronger. He would show it. Wheels up in 40. The room scattered into motion. Gear issued, radios checked, med kits counted twice. Mike ran Bravo through a fast, clean brief: sectors, call signs, breach order, evac lanes, contingency if the main route collapsed. Price handled checks on calm discipline. Briggs ran a quick rep on casualty drag. Nobody tried to sound brave. There wasn't time for that. The convoy rolled under a gray morning, Gulf air heavy even before the sun took over. As they neared the coastal facility, the smell of salt and oil mixed with something burned. Sarah took Alpha forward to the Overwatch ridge and scanned with optics. For hostiles visible on the roofs, unknowns inside, civilians confirmed in the south corridor. She spoke like she was reading a grocery list, even and precise. Donovan, Bravo holds south fence, cuts 2 exits, anchors evac. No hero plays. You see smoke turn black, you call it. Copy. Mike answered. Copy. Contact started fast. A sniper round punched concrete near the gate. Alpha answered with controlled bursts. Smoke grenades rolled, white clouds pushing across the yard. Mike pushed Bravo through a gap in the fence and set the first exit. 2 civilians appeared in a broken window, eyes wide, hands up. Briggs took a knee, waved them low, guided them to the cut fence. A second shot cracked off the metal beam above his head. Price leaned in. Keep them moving. We hold the lane. Radio chatter thickened. Alpha at North Stair. 2 hostiles down. Unknown movement on second floor. Sarah's voice again, still calm. Bravo, status. Mike scanned his sector. South fence set. 1 exit open. We're holding. He saw a door kick and 3 armed men spill into the yard, firing blind through the smoke. He took the first one at the hip with simonitions earlier this week, now this was live. He placed 2 controlled shots and moved his line 6 feet to the right to kill the angle on Price. The third man ran. Mike let him run into Alpha's field. A short burst up top ended it. A blast shook the east wall. Black smoke rose, ugly and fast. Mike felt heat on his face. He keyed the radio. Black smoke east. Possible kitchen or fuel. Evac lane 1 compromised. Sarah's reply was immediate. Copy. Push evac lane 2. Alpha reroutes to interior south stair. We meet you at the corridor pinch. Her tone never jumped. He copied and shifted the team. Briggs sprinted to pull the wire on the second exit. Price covered the angle and kept babies and grandparents moving. A woman stumbled and went down hard. Mike grabbed her under the arms and pulled her behind a concrete planter. You're okay. Up. Move. She moved. Then the thing he dreaded. A shadow at the roofline aimed down the evac lane. He saw the glint and knew he had seconds. Old Mike would have sprinted into the open. New Mike pointed, counted, and used the smoke. He slid to a better angle, put 2 rounds into the muzzle flash, and felt the lane breathe again. A trainee from last week would have died if he fed that crossfire. He did not feed it. Inside, Alpha cleared toward the south corridor. The radio carried short calls that sounded like metronome ticks. Left clear. 2 down. Door. Breach. Mike heard Sarah once, close to the mic, civilians in sight. Quiet now. He kept his lane open and his mouth shut. The second exit flowed. People cried and coughed and clutched each other. He counted them past, numbers in his head like beads on a wire. An explosion dropped a chunk of ceiling into the interior hall and cut Alpha's route for a long minute. The air turned thick. Fire alarms screamed. For a heartbeat, everything pulled tight like a rope about to snap. Mike felt the pull to fix it with volume. He didn't. He keyed once. Bravo holding. Lane 2 clear. We can take overflow on the south loading ramp. Sarah keyed back. Good. Hold for a push. Then, to her team, calm as a teacher, bypass left. Stack tight. Don't feed the corner. A teen boy broke from a group and ran the wrong way, straight toward the collapsed corridor. Briggs went after him, caught him by the collar, and took a falling piece of duct on his shoulder. He grunted, shoved the kid to Price, and signaled OK with 2 fingers. Price shoved the kid through the fence gap and turned back without a word. Mike saw the move, felt a flash of old pride, and let it pass. He did not make it about him. He made it about the lane. Rounds snapped low along the wall. A hostile tried to flank the evac. Mike dropped behind a low pallet, waited for the second step, and clipped him at the knee, then the shoulder. The man folded and slid his weapon away from reach. Another figure at the far end lifted a rifle and then saw Sarah's silhouette appear in the interior doorway with 2 operators tight behind her. He hesitated half a beat. It was half a beat too long. Alpha ended it. Civilians started to pour harder now, a rush that needed hands and voices. Bravo became hands and voices. This way. Keep low. Keep moving. Don't stop. Mike walked the line backward, eyes on the threat, one hand up for pace, the other steadying a man who looked like he might pass out. When a mother shoved a baby into his arms for 5 frantic seconds while she crawled under the cut fence, he didn't think. He held the baby and handed the child to Price with a nod that needed no words. When the last group came, smoke was thick and mean. The fire threatened to fold the ceiling. Sarah's radio call was as flat as ever. Last stack moving. Donovan, hold the mouth. We are out in 20. He stepped into the mouth of the lane and made himself as big as the opening. Anyone coming at this path would have to get through him or around him, and he wasn't leaving space. Alpha appeared through the haze with the last civilians, Sarah at the rear, walking backward, rifle up. She reached the line, glanced once at Mike, not a smile, not a pat, just a single look that said the one thing leaders say without sound when it matters, good. They pushed everyone through the fence and loaded the last 2 vans. Engines turned over. The yard began to sound like machines again instead of chaos. On the ridge, sirens approached. Local units took the outer perimeter. Gaines' voice finally came over the net, calm because he could be now. All units, account and report. Mike counted heads, checked Briggs' shoulder, saw the bruise blooming through the fabric. Briggs rolled at once and said he was good. Price leaned on the hood for a second, then stood up straight when Sarah came by. No one asked for praise. They didn't need it. Sarah did what she always did. She made it plain. We did the job. You kept your people alive. That is the standard. She looked at Mike one more time. Your lane held. Your calls were clean. No drag. Then she turned to talk to local command about a hot spot still smoking near the east wall. Only after the last van left and the sirens faded did Mike feel his hands shake. He leaned on the bumper, looked at the fence gap his team had cut, and let his breath slow. He had not shouted to prove control. He had not rushed to be the hero. He had stepped where he needed to step and held the line. The field had measured him and not found him wanting. He looked at the black smoke turning gray and understood what changed. The hand he kept down wasn't weakness. It was control. It was the difference between a story that ends at a fence and a story that ends with families in vans going home. He wiped grit from his teeth and keyed his radio once more, voice steady. Bravo complete. Returning to base. The ride back was quiet, the kind of quiet that shows up after adrenaline drops. Engines hummed, radios clicked, salt air fading in the vents. Mike checked faces in the rear view of the troop carrier, soot, sweat, red eyes, all upright. Price sat with her helmet in her lap, jaw set but calm. Briggs kept flexing his shoulder like he wanted to make sure it would still move when it mattered. Nobody asked how they did. They already knew. Fort Bragg rose out of the pines and put the day in a frame. Offload was clean. Weapons cleared, med checks fast, gear to racks. Gaines met them at the bay door and gave one nod that covered the whole operation. Debrief in 30. Hydrate. Mike didn't wander. He took a sink, ran water over his hands until the soot thinned out, and then went straight to the briefing room. Sarah was already at the screen, hair tied back, uniform marked by smoke at the sleeves. She didn't sit. She opened with numbers. Civilians evacuated. Hostiles neutralized or detained. Injuries. She played the timeline, not the drama. Then she cut to the parts that mattered, where the plan bent and didn't break, where a bad decision could have ruined a lane, where a small adjustment saved minutes they couldn't spare. She highlighted 2 moves from Alpha, 1 from Bravo. Briggs' collar grab on the kid. Price's coverage when the first exit failed. Mike's call on the black smoke and the switch to evac 2. She didn't use the word hero. She used effective. When it landed on Mike, she made it plain. Your lane held because your calls were lean and you didn't feed angles. You counted before you moved. That is the correction we needed from you. He took it in. No chest swell, no smart line. Just a breath that reached the bottom of his lungs for the first time in days. Gaines stepped in. After action items. Comms airtime trimmed by 20%. Evac tools cached closer to fence lines. A tweak to stair discipline when visibility drops. Then the part Mike had expected since the punch, documentation. The incident stayed in his jacket. Corrective plan remained in force. Sarah had signed the recommendation that kept it that way. Gaines didn't sugarcoat it. You bought room to improve by actually improving. Spend it well. The platoon cleared out. Sarah stayed, eyes on the last frame of the floor plan. Mike waited, then spoke. Thank you, for the call at the corridor pinch, for all of it. She turned. Don't thank me for doing my job, she said. Show me you can do yours on the worst day without me in the room. He nodded. He didn't look for more. The days that followed were not victory laps. They were work. Alpha 9 ran paired down lanes with deliberate stress, comm failures injected mid-run, a lost civilian tag planted off-route, a mock injury that forced a switch in stack leadership. Mike didn't take the front every time. He let Briggs start lanes, let Price anchor, let the younger sergeants call timings and weather the pauses. He watched for the old itch and strangled it before it bled into the net. When someone missed, he corrected with the why, not with volume. He did it in front of the board, not from across the yard. At Chow, the whisper track thinned. People had new things to talk about. A supply glitch. A leave request. The game on Friday. The punch didn't vanish, but it slid into the background noise where old mistakes live when they've been paid for. Mike still felt it in the bones of the building. He used it like a weight vest. Sarah drifted in and out of lanes like a shadow that only cast a line when it mattered. Once, she stopped Mike's clip on a slow-motion review and tapped a single frame where his lead foot was wrong by inches. This is where you used to try to win the room, she said. He looked at the freeze. He saw it. He adjusted the next day and didn't need the clip to prove it. Gaines called him in and handed him a thin binder. Draft SOP updates. Your notes are in the margins. Clean them up. Mike took the work seriously. He scrapped 2 sentences that sounded tough and meant nothing. He clarified evac lane criteria, added a step to confirm window status before a split breach, and wrote a line he wished he had known by heart 2 months ago: if the path feeds a crossfire, it isn't a path. Price started to run PT blocks without asking. Briggs took on radio drills and stopped sounding like he wanted to apologize to the mic. 2 privates who used to wait for orders began to anticipate the next 3 moves. The team's posture changed, shoulders didn't ride up near ears when the horn sounded. They moved like the plan could flex and still hold. Late one afternoon, Sarah called a short formation by the tower. She didn't give a speech. She handed out 3 short commendations: Briggs for initiative under risk, Price for perimeter integrity, a junior specialist for a hinged decision that cut seconds. Then she said one thing to the whole group: we respect outcomes built on discipline. Keep building them. That was it. She walked. In Echo Wing that night, Mike opened the notebook and looked at the 3 lines he had written in a low place. Observe before you order. Explain the why. Correct without ego. He added a 4th, hold the standard when it's quiet, so it's there when it's loud. He closed the book and slept like the floor wouldn't tilt under him. 2 mornings later, a soft rumor firmed into orders: Sarah's eval window was closing. She would rotate out. The base moved the way it always does when someone important leaves, half efficient, half sentimental, all under the skin. Mike found her by the map table at East Wing. He didn't try to fill the air. He just said, if you had one thing to leave me with, what is it? She didn't hesitate. Don't mistake silence for weakness and noise for control. The room will learn your standard by the decisions you repeat, not the speeches you give. He filed it where it would stay. On her last pass through Alpha 9, they ran 1 clean lane and stopped on the line. She looked at the stack, at the corners, at the distance between boots that used to be sloppy and now wasn't. She looked at Mike and gave the smallest nod she had ever given him. It felt louder than a promotion ceremony. The helicopter took her at noon. No formation, no applause. Just rotor wash and a shadow that slid across the lanes she had sharpened. Mike stood with Gaines at the edge of the pad. The captain spoke without looking over. You're not done. But you're not where you started. Mike watched the bird lift and vanish over the tree line. He didn't feel lighter. He felt responsible in a way that didn't need an audience. Back on the field, he set the board for the afternoon. New hinge. New pace. Same standard. He took a marker, drew the route, and faced the platoon. We're not going to chase time today, he said. We're going to earn it. Helmets went on. Gloves tightened. The buzzer sounded. And when the first door moved, it was because the why was clear, the angle was clean, and the people holding it knew they weren't performing for rank, they were practicing for a day when smoke turns black and families need a lane that does not break. That's what they chased the next week, and the week after, until the pattern was muscle deep and quiet. The field didn't look different, but it felt different. The lines formed without chatter. The first door lifted when the why was clear. Mike kept the board clean and the calls short. He didn't try to sound like Sarah. He sounded like himself with better breaks. Gaines watched from the tower, same folded arms, same pad, but the notes were shorter. Price owned anchor like it was stitched into her kit. Briggs' radio checks came crisp, no tremor, no apology. The new privates didn't learn caution from fear. They learned it from how the older hands moved when the buzzer went. Nobody talked about the punch anymore. It was history that had been paid for, not a flag you waved to feel tall. At chow, conversation drifted to normal things. Schedules. A broken dryer. A weekend ball game. When training stories came up, they were about the hinge that saved 2 seconds or the window that got marked red and stayed red. Mike measured progress with a simple question: could a stranger walk into Alpha 9 and see the standard without anyone explaining it? Most days, yes. One afternoon, Gaines called a short review in the command room. No ceremony. Just a table, a binder, and coffee. He slid Mike a final copy of the corrected SOP. The lines Mike had written were there in print. Confirm windows before split. Cache tools at fence lines. If the path feeds a crossfire, it isn't a path. Gaines tapped the cover. This outlives all of us if it's worth the paper. Make sure it is. Mike nodded. He felt the weight of it and didn't mind. They ran a full evaluation lane with outside observers, no warning, no warm-up. Sim smoke, stacked platforms, rolling targets, a planted, lost, tagged, and a comms cut halfway through. The stack didn't stutter. When the net died, Price made hand signals and Briggs mirrored timing like they'd practiced it for months, because they had. Mike watched the lane from rear overwatch, counted beats, and corrected once when a foot drifted too far into a bad angle. The buzzer ended on schedule. An observer looked at the clock and then at the floor plan and said nothing. That was the best note possible. In Echo Wing that night, Mike pulled the old notebook and read the first page where his handwriting still dug through the paper. Observe before you order. Explain the why. Correct without ego. He added one more line at the bottom and kept it plain, keep people safe when no one is looking. He closed the book and set it in the top drawer where he could find it on bad days. A week later, a memo came through. Sarah's commendation for the Gulfport operation had posted. Price shrugged like it didn't change her job. Briggs grinned and clipped the notice on the bulletin board. Mike sent a short line to the address Gaines gave him, standard holds. Thank you. No flourishes. He didn't expect a reply. 2 days later, he got one sentence back, hold it when it's boring. He printed it and taped it inside the whiteboard cabinet where only he would see it. The platoon rotated a few faces. 2 transfers out, 2 in. The new pair brought speed and rough edges. Mike didn't push them to match tempo on day 1. He showed them the board, the hinge, the window, the crossfire rule, the evac cut. He walked them to the fence line where the cutters hang now, within reach, not locked in a crate. He pointed to the note on the cabinet and shut the door before they could read it. They would learn it by watching. Gaines called a final sit-down on the eval incident. It had been months, but he closed the loop like a man who doesn't leave lids half on. Corrective plan complete, he said. The mark stays in the file. The work stays on the field. Don't make me revisit it. Mike said, you won't have to. Gaines believed him enough to move on. On a gray morning, a real call flickered across the net, not a crisis, not Gulfport again, just a small assist outside the wire. The kind of task that never makes a headline but can go wrong fast if you cut corners. They loaded light, drove out, did it clean, came back early, and put gear away without a story to tell. Mike liked that. It proved the point he'd been building toward. The best days end with nothing to brag about. He took the board for the last block of the week and drew a lane that looked like a dozen others. That was the point. Reps matter more than reels. He faced the platoon and laid it out. West hinge. Window marked. Don't feed the corner. Pace, not rush. He looked across faces that had watched him at his worst and at better. He didn't ask for trust. He kept earning it. They ran. Clean. Then again. Still clean. He stopped them before they got sloppy from comfort. We could chase time, he said, or we can protect it. We're protecting it. Helmet stayed on. Nobody groaned. They understood. When the horn finally went quiet and the racks held the rifles and the dust settled, Mike walked Alpha 9 alone. He put a hand on the cold metal of the stair where he'd once tried to win a room and saw the path he'd been on then. It ended at a fence that never opens. The path he stood on now was simple: do the work, teach the why, keep the angle clean, keep the lane open. He didn't need a speech to mark that change. He needed to show up tomorrow and do it again. He stepped out into the yard as the sun slid behind the pines and the tower lights came on. Gaines crossed the gravel with 2 coffees and passed one over. "Anything you want to change before Monday?" the captain asked. Mike looked back at the field. "One small thing," he said. "Cache 2 more cutters at the south fence." He smiled once, "Quick. And print another copy of the SOP for the new guys." The captain nodded. "That's leadership, Donovan. Not the big days. The small ones you stack until the big day can't break them." Mike took a breath that didn't taste like dust. He pictured a day when smoke might turn black again and felt the steady weight of a team that would hold. The board would be clean. The why would be clear. And the lane would not break. He didn't need anyone to promise it. He planned to make it true, one decision at a time, until even a stranger could walk into Alpha 9 and see it without a single word spoken.